Ayahuasca mamai taki taki muiki. Ayahuasca mamai taki taki muiki. Chuya chuya jamping pumi. Miski ñuño cuerpo chaita. Chuya chuya jamping pumi. Miski ñuño cuerpo chaita. Tra la 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 ira. La 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 ira. Tra la 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 ira. La 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 ira. Ay la 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 ira.
There
Ay
seems
la
to be
la
a
la
strong Aya presence in the community. I
la
like it.
la la ira. La 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 iri.
Good medicine.
Ayahuasca ramping mamta. Taki taki muiki.
Hey, Kit.
Ayahuasca ramping mamta. Taki taki
Hey,
muiki.
Yanesi. Nice to see you.
Hey there, thanks for the invite.
Glad you're here.
Ayahuasca saping mamta. Taki taki muiki. Ayahuasca saping mamta. Taki taki muiki. Chuya chuya jamping pumi. Miski ñuño cuerpo chaita. Chuya chuya jamping pumi. Miski ñuño cuerpo chaita. Ra la 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 ira. La 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 ira. Ra la 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 ira. La 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 ira. Ay la 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 ira. La 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 ira. Ay la 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 ira. La 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 ira. Ayahuasca son joncito manta. Taki taki muiki. Ayahuasca son joncito manta. Taki taki muiki. Chuya chuya jamping pumi. Miski ñuño cuerpo chaita. Chuya chuya jamping pumi. Miski ñuño cuerpo chaita. Ayahuasca lucerito manta. Taki taki muiki. Ayahuasca lucerito manta. Taki taki muiki. Chuya chuya jamping pumi. Miski ñuño cuerpo chaita. Chuya chuya jamping pumi. Miski ñuño cuerpo chaita. Ta la 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 ira. La 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 ira. La 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 ira. La 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 ira. Ay la 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 ira. La 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 ira. Ay la 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 ira. La 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 ira. Ayahuasca cogojito manta. Taki taki muiki. Ayahuasca cogojito manta. Taki taki muiki. Chuya chuya jamping pumi. Miski ñuño cuerpo chaita. Chuya chuya jamping pumi. Miski ñuño cuerpo chaita. La 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 ira. La 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 ira. La 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 ira. La 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 ira. Ay la 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 ira. La 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 ira. Ay la 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 ira. La 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 ira. Ayahuasca cielosito manta. Taki taki muy. Ayahuasca cielosito manta. Taki taki muy.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you all for taking time to be here with us together. So nice to see all of your beautiful faces. We'll start off with doing some gratitudes here. You'll get to hear from each member of Web3 for Life Guild. We'll share some gratitudes, and then we'll talk a little bit about what it is that we're doing here today. So as we're sharing our gratitudes, feel free to put in the chat some things that you're grateful for, and also let us know where you're from, where's home for you. So feel free to share those things in the chat. And Randall, I still don't hear your voice. Oh, maybe now.
Check.
Oh, Randall in the house. Good. Okay. So to kick things off with some gratitudes, I'd go ahead and start and say I'm grateful for the birds. They've been very active today. I'm grateful for the sun, the moon, grateful for all the teachers that are been guides, and grateful for the ancestors, grateful for all of the ancestors of our mother's people and our father's people who are all gathered here today. And grateful for the O'odham, the Hohokam, the Salado, and the Apache who've all tended this land before me. And with that, I'll pass it over to Evan.
Hey everybody, I'm Evan, member of the Guild, and today I'm feeling grateful most for community. I had the opportunity to have dinner here on the farm with multiple generations, and to be nourished by the connection over food and everybody bringing food together. Just really makes me very grateful. Grateful for the land here in Texas, and grateful for the land in Michigan where I'm from. And grateful to be here with so many beautiful people working for the brighter planet that we know is possible. Makes me very excited, and I'm grateful to have hope today. And with that, I will pass it over to Kathy.
Thank you. Today, I am especially grateful for my mother's health and her mother's health, and all of the mothers that came before them. I am grateful for the opportunity to tend the land that I currently reside on, and that land is starting to show signs of spring. And so yesterday, I'm grateful for the opportunity yesterday to get my hands back in the earth as I cleared a little bit of space for them to see the sunlight. And I'm really grateful for community, brotherhood, sisterhood, and the deep caring that I feel in those spaces. And I'm really grateful to be here with each of you today and connect and to presence what is with you. And with that, I will pass it to Randall.
Thanks. Today, I'm grateful for you, Kathy, and to each of you for being here with us. I'm grateful for technology and the opportunity to find all the ways that it does not work, and for humor and play, and for the sun that comes streaming in my window at a time when it may be dark for some of you. And I'm grateful for this round planet. Feel free to post something in the chat that you're grateful for.
Evan, you want to talk to us about what we're doing here today?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go ahead and kick it off after doing one of my favorite rituals to opening a meeting. As a guild, we've spent a fair amount of time connecting with organizations. Many are represented here, others are not. Organizations that are working altruistically at the intersection of Web3, the regenerative spaces. And one of the things that we've seen is that there can be a rush towards working at the level of strategy and at the level of vision. And there's a lot of really great activity that's taking place in our respective organizations. And even with all of that great activity at the strategy level and at the vision level, one thing we've seen is and we've come to get clear on is the importance of culture and how important it is that we have really healthy, viable, coherent cultures that give rise to great strategy and great vision. And the culture level, what we see is really that being at the level of our being. And so there's a lot of doing and a lot of activity in our organizations. And what we know is that culture ultimately comes first. There's a lot in blockchain where people are talking about technology being layer zero. And what we believe in the Guild is that the human layer, that humans are layer zero. And that ultimately it is from us and our beingness, our connectedness, our culture that then arises all of our technological solutions to the various projects and the areas that we're actually focused on. And so we've been saying for a while, humans are layer zero. It's from that collective field that all of our strategy and our vision emerges from. And so there's this cultural backdrop. It's the environment that we operate in, and it's often overlooked as we rush to effect change. And so our intention with our work today is to explore culture, to light the digital campfire of culture amongst those that are working altruistically, and that not just that we light the campfire, but that we can co-evolve culture together with intentionality, that we can come together and make explicit some of the things that culture can be a bit nebulous. And so how do we take this nebulous concept of culture and how do we actually light the campfire so that we make it more explicit, and that field that holds all of our work together, both individually in each of our organizations and then collectively as one giant group that are working towards shared aims in a shared direction towards a brighter earth? How do we make sure that we've made explicit that culture so that it can then give rise to even stronger strategy and even stronger and more clear vision? And so that's really what we're setting out to do today, is to light this campfire and engage in this conversation around what is culture. And we've got some really, I think, interesting conversations ahead of us that we'll all be leaning into to help us understand a little bit more about what is culture. And then at the other end, come out with some takeaways that we can bring back to our individual organizations, as well as have the campfire lit in this shared space amongst all of us. And so I'm going to pass it over to Chris, and you can talk a little bit more about culture.
In just a minute, we're going to transition to some collaboration space in Miro, and I'll be dropping a link in there. Off to you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. So culture, what is culture? You know, interesting question. If you have some ways of saying what culture is, please share there in the chat. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. I've heard it said that culture is what how we be and what we do without anyone telling us. And that may not be, 100% inclusive of what culture is, but it's an interesting way to look at it. And we have an interesting framework of some key elements of culture that we're going to be looking at today. So let me share my screen here. Is this coming up?
It is.
Okay. So we're looking at the elements of culture right now, just as an example, using the old world, Web 2 or the status quo, business as usual. And the main issue or the main elements that we're going to be looking at: status, totems, rituals, and taboos. And what we want to say is, like, what are those for the culture that we want to have within these intersections that we find ourselves in? And so just to warm us up a bit, you can see some examples in the old world of what those taboos, status, ritual, and totems might be. This is by no means inclusive. It's just to give us an idea of what this might look like. And we'll just spend a moment talking about each of them here. That way we can actually get into doing this together. So that in mind, I'll just start off with status. I think about status as any culture or group. What is it that we bring value to? We say that these things give someone status or give someone importance. That might mean in the old world how much money they have, their role, title, position. But that's essentially like, what are we giving status to as a culture? And then Randall, you want to talk about the totems?
Yeah, totems, or sometimes we think of these as icons or ideals or exemplars. We could point to these as maybe the highest ideal. I don't know if we count Jack Welch as a highest ideal, but maybe in the status quo realm, he would have been. And certainly these unicorn companies are examples that we point to of like the best that there is to offer, the things that we point each other to and say, hey, did you know about? And so that's the idea of the totem. Kathy, you want to cover rituals?
Yeah. Rituals are, we can start by thinking of them as practices that we consciously engage in to bring about intention, awareness, reflection, or explicating things in our behaviors and our actions. Another way to think about rituals is things we do to elicit certain being states. So, as an example, in sort of the status quo realm, that could be IPOs, that could be financial reporting, that could be quarterly kickoffs. Rituals can also be a daily gratitude practice with yourself or with a group of people. It could be the good morning gestures in the web3 space. It could be things that bring one into rhythm is another way to think about it. Is rituals often are in relationship to rhythm, in service of bringing attention and awareness and explicating what is coming up and then responding from that place.
Thank you, Kathy. And finally, taboos. Taboos are what help us kind of know what's off limits in a culture. And so a lot of times they're explicit, sometimes they're implicit. They're basically the conduct agreements that let us know this is not okay. Generally, in most cultures, doing things to harm other people is typically a taboo. In the corporate world, there's all types of taboos. There's party fouls, right? These things that are not okay. And it's important that we have some type of, you can say guards or guardrails in terms of what is and isn't okay for cultures. And so in the Web 2 world or in the status quo world, an example of that is maybe shared distributed decision making or distributed decision making, right? In organizations that have a hierarchical structure, how often do we actually adopt things like sociocracy? How often do we distribute some of that decision making? And that can often be seen as a taboo in a world in which status and role and title are important. We don't actually distribute that out. Another would be work-life balance. That's something that I've seen, be popular and important, obviously, in Web3, and in the previous world. That taboo is, we work at all costs. And so the 40-hour work week or the 50-hour work week or the 60-hour work week, the 80-hour work week, those are all championed. And the taboo would be to have balance. And it's good that we've seen some migration towards that. And you can probably think of a number of other taboos that come to mind. And so as we look at this status, totems, rituals, and taboos, we're using this framework to help us have a rich conversation around what does it mean to actually have culture in the Web3 space. And so we're going to head over into the Miro. What we think culture is in the Web3 space. So if you want to head over to the Miro now, I'm going to
that link again for you into the chat.
Flip my camera off. If you want to head over to the Miro board, and that's the link in the chat, we're going to direct our attention to first to the status piece. And our goal here is to think about what is it that gives status in Web3? What are the different elements that we use inside our communities and inside the Web3 space as a whole that help us understand what is status?
And I'll just put an extra punctuation on this, I guess, which is that because this is at the intersection of the bioregional regeneration and Web3 spaces, that you might be less familiar with like the Web3 stuff, and that's okay. We're talking about the intersection of these cultures, so you can think about this status in terms of what you would like to see a culture like ours have, and even if it's not Web3 specific, that's totally fine. And you're thinking about this from the perspective of the communities that you represent, and for the culture that we want to have intentionally. And if anyone's having some challenges right now, go ahead and take yourself off mute and let us know so we can help you out.
You can zoom in a little bit on this quadrant, Chris. I think it might be helpful for your screen share for those of us who are mostly observing and not interacting on the Miro board.
Nice.
Oh, NFTs. How many tokens do you have?
Yeah, this will be an interesting one to be talking about it as like how the culture is now and what's the culture that we want to have. And so we don't need to parse those out so much right now, but we probably will in a moment.
Another thing that might be interesting to consider is, are you looking at status on an individual versus a community basis? So at an individual level, a community level, a DAO level, just offering that to open up different possibilities that might come up.
All right, I see some coming in here. And then if there's anyone who doesn't have access to Miro but can see this and wants to add some, you could just call them out verbally, and then we can add those here too. Okay, and I see some stuff coming in here. Also, as you go through this, feel free to get another sticky and making it the same blockchain is bad. I totally agree that's like that's a status thing. Whoever put that, I hear that. If there's some that you're like, yes, this is one that I'd like to see is part of the culture that we're intentionally building here, then maybe make a smaller sized sticky and then put like a +1 or something on it, so that way you can signal, yeah, that's one that I'm into. Normies. And I'll just start reading some of these out to keep things going, and then we're gonna shift over in a little bit over to the totems. But we have If you're being interviewed on podcasts or speak at events, PR, acknowledged by others, how generous you are with your time, wisdom, ideas, give status, how big your wallet history is, status, liquid token, a funded DAO. What else gives status, and what things do we want to lift up as the kind of culture that we want to have? I see some +1s being added on here now for the things that we want to intentionally lift up and develop. I really want to +1 one of my own, but I won't. Regenerative endeavors, +1. That's a hot word these days. Okay, how are we feeling about moving on to the next one? Let me just hear from anyone here. You can take yourself off mute and say where you're at and how you're feeling about going to totems now. Still working? Not still working? Sounds, declensions? Silence suggests time to go to the next one.
I'm
Yes,
ready.
All right.
Let's do
All
it.
right.
Let's do
All right.
it.
Here we go. Cool. Okay, so now let's switch it over to totems. Let's start adding some in here. What are the totems? Green
The things
pill.
that we hold up as most exemplifying the way we feel in this new world, or the way we want.
Vitalik, nice.
Yeah.
Another way to think about this as well is archetypes. So you'll notice that Chris put green pill, which obviously isn't a person, but is an ideal in and of itself, right? To be green pilled,
That's not the
step
Griff
into the
Green pill.
regenerative world. Nicely done.
You think about organizations, think about individual people, groups and
Nice.
cultures.
I got a +1 for Ostrom right there, Roberto.
Ooh! Listen to the grandmas. Code of law, punks, the trusted seed, right. And then, especially for folks who are less into the Web3 stuff, like if you've got non-Web3 totems that you think are important and part of what this new culture is, please share those too.
And if you feel called to start dropping in some rituals, feel free to dive right into that. What rituals do we already have? What rituals could we start? Are starting.
Tyson Young, how do you spell his last name? I'll do Tyson Y for now, and I'll fix that later. Hey, Kit, what's the name of that lady that you never name because of how you always bring her up? If she's not on here, you should definitely put her on here.
Can you hear me?
Co-creation.
Yeah.
Carol Sanford.
Oh, her too. Yeah, and the Mangs and everything else. But no, I thought that was there's some book that you always reference all the time, and it's the author. It's okay.
Oh, Hannah Arendt, you mean?
Maybe. Yeah, I think that's her. Yeah, definitely Carol Sanford.
I love seeing an
I'm just
idea,
gonna
co-creation, interbeing.
Mocktenberger.
Oh yeah. Wow, we got a lot on the exemplars, totems, ideals, and icons. Let's do a
Because it's
time.
groovy.
Say again.
Because it's groovy.
It's way groovy.
That's
Yeah,
where the juice is.
I'm feeling that.
Wrote some stuff in the chat. I've had to come and go because of events here. This is Jillian speaking. So I don't know if what I wrote in the chat is answering what you were looking for in the totem, but it can just be there.
Nice. Okay, I'm having a hard time getting back to chat. So if someone else can pick that one up, I think I got it now.
Emergence, co-creation, holism,
Woo.
regenerative.
Right? Those are good for the status. Jillian, I'm so glad you're here, by the way. This is great.
I'm still trying to finish this article for the Permaculture Design magazine before I get out the door in 40 minutes. So I'm a bit stressed, but I wanted to honor what you're doing. So, and trust we'll have other opportunities going forward. I'm glad to see Roberto's here.
Yeah, me too. What's up, Roberto? Okay.
I told him about you.
All right, good. It's been fun, the interactions we've had so far. I see some folks are adding in the rituals. Love it. I'm gonna add some in here too. Someone already do gratitudes. Yeah.
Also noting that there's a -1 that's popped up in
Ooh,
the
that's
emergence of the process. So I think
cool.
that's pretty neat.
Yes.
And I'm definitely interested to hear how the good morning ritual is actually not part of the ideal culture that we're creating. So
right.
If you put the -1 and feel inclined to speak up, I'd be interested about that.
It doesn't feel like a taboo per se, but it's like an empty ritual.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hey, this song sounds familiar. Oh, I see what you mean on the emptiness of the ritual. It's like, yeah. All right. How we doing? We feeling we want to move to taboos?
The rug pull.
The rug pull.
What's the opposite of transparency? Like being
I think it's opaque.
Opaque. Yeah. This one's really interesting. I put it down there, leadership as a taboo.
I thought we were supposed to be leaderful. Yes, that'll be a fun one to get. I mean, these are all just like they start the conversations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tech before human. Oh, where's my +1? Oop. Hang on, let's see. Let's put that there. That there. Doing being greater than being. Thanks, person.
Regen washing also gets +1.
I like that someone put Lao Tzu here. That is magnificent. There's like so many more on the ideals to get to later.
So glad to be here with you.
Here, here. Okay, we're about at time here, so let's wrap this up with any +1s or final ones we want to add.
Working for free.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Good
All
catch.
right. Yeah. Let's shift into some dialogue here. So let's finish up. We could turn that beautiful Icaro down and let's see what people have to say. So look what we've done here. There's so much richness. I feel like there's more to do here, but we do have a limited amount of time. So I'd like to hear anyone who is keen on sharing, now that we've done this together and you see what's here, what's alive in you now? Who's gonna break the ice?
Feel free to just come off mic. Come off mute, I should say.
I know this is not a nervous bunch. At least I don't think that's the case. I don't think folks are too shy here. So we do want to hear what you're seeing now.
And as we've explicated some of these things that have been sitting in our subconscious or in our preconscious, what would you bring and share with the others that you work with and do with these perspectives?
I really notice at the same time as I look at this, like a real, like a two really strong feelings. Like on the one hand, I feel, I mean, it's incredible the amount of ideals that we already have in this space and in this kind of world that we're working in, and it's incredibly inspiring to see it. And then I also really noticed my strong resistance to, I'd say, almost a third of those ideals that are in that space, and just kind of noticing within me like how interesting it is to, I think, or kind of reflects my own personal challenge of like to be deeply enmeshed in something, and to give that space to be enmeshed in something that might have such a strong element that like doesn't feel right to me, but that doesn't mean it's not necessarily right. Yeah, I guess that's the main experience as I look at this, among others.
What's standing out for you, Roberto?
Thanks for sharing. Are there any curiosities that this spurs up or shifts in your thinking now looking at this together?
Okay, I'll jump in.
All right.
There's something about a campfire and Miro that is an oxymoron. A campfire is where you sit in this amazing universe and you dream into it. And there's something about this type of technology that isn't a campfire. It isn't the flames. It isn't the warmth. It isn't the people sitting around warming their hands. And I am a huge fan of campfire. So for me, the question is, how can we make this digital campfire feel more like a real campfire? Something that we can dream into in a way, and in a timeless, there's something about a campfire that's timeless. So it's just a question, because I guess the amazing thing about a campfire is it seems limitless. And so, yeah, I'm just dropping that idea out there.
Excellent.
Nice. I love that. I love that perspective. It feels a bit almost counter to the process that we've done here. And I think about what is the culture that is able to hold, well, maybe dissent isn't the right word, but hold our constructive conversations and our differing views. And I just really appreciate that you feel comfortable to share that in this space. And to me, that's a cultural element in even of itself, right? Our ability to engage in the dialogos and do our sense making around even what a campfire is. So I appreciate that.
The other thing, Evan, about a campfire for me is the incredible amount of silence that there is in a campfire. And again, one of the challenges is in a 1-hour Zoom call to get a lot of stuff out there. We don't have that silence. How can we create moments when we Zoom together where it's okay for silence? I'm connected with this Vipassana group and do a lot of facilitating at the board meetings. And so this Vipassana group of people, they're very experienced at 10 days of silence. But if there's a 10-second silence at a board meeting, everyone freaks out. They don't know what to do with it. And yet one would think they would be trained in just allowing the silence to be. And so that would be another question I would ask. How can we allow silence to enter into the space in a way that we don't feel vulnerable?
Way.
I guess I can build off that a little bit. Well, I was very on board. I am on board with the idea of focusing on culture and focusing on being state. I think that's exactly right. And then the two words together really stopped me, and I'm thinking about it and don't even know where I am yet, but the idea of intentional culture. And I'm thinking culture is so organic. And it really brings up in my mind, how does culture evolve? And can we be intentional about it? And I'm struck by this sort of is like approaching it through a framework rather than approaching it through beingness, which is maybe what you're talking about, Julian, of silence and and just a kind of, intuiting our connections and then maybe voicing something on occasion. Anyhow, those are the thoughts that come to mind. This is provoking. I mean, I had a problem of not knowing how to enter something on Miro, so I had some ideas, I couldn't get it down. But then I'm stuck with these questions. That's kind of where I've been. Yeah.
Thank you. Yanesi, can we hear from you? And if we can't, that's okay too. All right.
I was dealing with that. The technology. Okay, well, I must confess, I really like this exercise. I think we have a, what's the name of this? A paradigm, a different paradigm for certain things. And this is like a galaxy of ideas that we, of course, we can take advantage of. I mean, it's really interesting how we can identify certain things and work directly to solve them or to improve them. Yeah, that would be my impression of everything. So thank you, Chris.
Yes, thank you. A question at hand is, given that this was our first session and we have the intentions of doing these on an ongoing basis, what might a next session look like? And Om, you want to speak in here? Oh, sorry, Yanesi. Yeah, if you have a thought there, since you're already off mute, please.
Oh, so sorry. No. I think I have mixed ideas right now. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Thank you, Chris. We've been creating culture within the framework that we live in. And right now, in America, the United States, actually, we're subject to the technology of political structure. And within that technology that's inherently unequal by design and definition, we are not in control of creating our culture, actually. We're in control of how we manipulate the artifacts in this culture, but we're creating subcultures to get by if we can, but we're still not having an impact on the wider, larger structure that's underneath all of our political existence. So I think that this web3 technology and where we can go with culture is to use it as a leveler. Every individual has the ability now to be relevant, important, and equal in value, opinion-wise and everything else, to everybody else who participates in a different kind of structure for existence, whether it's political or not, who knows? But until we have that kind of equality and sovereign existence, then it's really difficult to say that we're creating culture, that we can. And a technology that provides sovereign existence is the groundwork for any kind of culture that can flourish. So it kind of doesn't matter what you do with it after you've got that basis taken care of. Everyone's free to do what they want at that point. And that freedom to be cultural and in control of your sovereign self is where I think we can go with this technology. And we don't have to define what culture is. We just have to say, our tools won't let you do anything wrong because it protects every individual equally. Anyway, so that's kind of where I go with it. And I think we have a way to do that. And I've been working on it myself for a while, and I'm excited. That's partially, what I'm doing here. But I think a lot of it involves a complete concept of identity that's protected and sovereign. So everything you do is part of your identity. Everything you've ever done is part of your identity, and you should be in complete control of that. Except for the places where you interact with others, and then they're in control of their part of it. But neither one of you can deny that that thing happened, because it would be by, you both did it. So, unless you have a conspiracy to make people pretend it didn't, more or less, you are yourself. So I think technologically we can do that now. We can create a whole self that then does whatever they want because they're protected to be themselves completely. Anyway, thanks.
Let's go.
And what about the role of stories? Stories might be a campfire element. Stories that you bring from the places that you hang out, and stories of what we want to make occur.
Randall, on that point of stories, like what we have with all these stickies are like prompts for all kinds of stories that we might be able to tell, So if in another session that we do, we focused on the storytelling element and we sourced our stories from what we have here, that could be a pretty interesting way to carry it forward if that's something that people are feeling here, Well, if Julian likes it, we should. Oh, if Roberto and Julian like it, then we're onto something. No, that's good. That's good.
I have a question or a provocation, a little bit in response to your comments, Julian. We've used our glorious minds today, and I wonder if you settle into the body a bit here. What feelings would you like to inhabit at a digital campfire? What would you like it to feel like? That could be sensations, that could be emotions, that could be energy states. What would you like to cultivate within yourself and within the field? And any words or gestures, please just allow them to come through uninhibited. Julian.
I think that would be a question for everybody here, right? Out of our minds and into our bodies. That's a challenge. The one thing I take away, which I can feel viscerally, is I'm in this space with awesome people. I know that. It's just, what can we do with our awesomeness to have an effect on the world? And I take that butterfly metaphor that we know, that if a butterfly flutters in Brazil, can it cause a tornado in Texas? And sometimes I think we're overambitious, and just being who we are, that we just talked about, and coming together in ways that increase that, I think we can have the butterfly effect on everything else that we touch. So that's a strange answer to your question, Kathy.
It's beautiful.
An alternative is anything you don't want to feel
Mm.
is sometimes a way to elicit things. Roberto, I saw you sneak in, so I'm going to call on you.
Yes, for me, yeah, I resonate also with what Julian said, and from looking at the answers, it really is a great bunch. And I think that there is that personal connection that of that magic moment that happens at the fire, where there is the light shining on your face, and this kind of like magic happening, and then indeed the storytelling, the sharing of something. And I wonder if you can actually reproduce it online by actually putting up a video of a campfire, kind of where soften the light and put like a candle right in front of our face while we're telling this story, and try to somehow kind of really look at each other, not at the mirror board, right? And or look at the campfire and not at the mirror board. And potentially when maybe we want to take some notes, maybe we can go there or something. But I think that that personal looking at each other's connection, it's really where the magic can happen. And then after that, one-on-one, I say, hey, you said that. Maybe we can explore it further. Maybe for the next session, some ideas there.
So
but I'll be also happy to join if none of this happens.
So I did put a link to Wanda. I guess quite a few of you probably know about Wanda, but it's a type of Zoom technology. But when you join, they give you a room and it stays open 24 hours. And so the way I understand it, not having used it, but being on it and sort of watched it, is you can just go and see if anyone's in a room. You know, and Roberto could be in the room and I'm thinking, is there anyone in there? And then we talk. And it's just like a cafe. You go into the cafe, you chat with your friends and you move out. And maybe we just have a room as part of the tools, as one of the tools, where you know that you can go into that room and connect with one of your friends.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I want to check it out. I haven't heard of it. Some folks may want to continue the conversation after this time. So a few things. One is I'll put a link back to the link tree. There is a good old Discord server that we reluctantly fired up, but it's probably the easiest way to get people talking async as we continue these conversations. We'll also keep the time open. I'll be after hours. Maybe a few other people will if you just want to hang out and be together. And Arseniji, I see you got your hand up. Tell me how to pronounce your name, brother.
Try to remove J and then E-A.
Arsenia.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
So
Just to build up on what Julian and Roberto saying, kind of my experience of last year and a half being in this virtual space, I just think that this kind of feeling of campfire is definitely what Roberto said for me, in a sense, kind of sharing personal stories, because I think although we don't have that human element, we have just this intellectual element through which we share. So I think by sharing our stories, for me, is kind of something that created that feeling, maybe because it was COVID, so it was not comparable, but sometimes even kind of building on that stronger connection in real life, kind of establishing maybe even deeper connection online that then kind of transpose offline.
Now there's a challenge. Yeah, cool. I think we're starting to get a clear, at least a clearer picture of what our next session can look like. And timing wise, we've talked about doing it next week. Maybe it's better for it to be in 2 weeks from now. So any kind of maybe just hand gestures for next week, and hand gestures for in 2 weeks. All right, cool. Well, this is the end of our time. Like I said, I'll be sticking around here. So if anyone wants to keep chatting, yes, establishing rituals. Hey. So thank you all very much. I'll be sticking around. It was a pleasure to be with you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think this is a very courageous thing to try and do. I think it's wonderful, and I look to being part of it. Thank you.
Hey, it's a pleasure for you to be with us.
Thank you.
Yep. First session of many.